it's not even all about the culture. It's just about honoring humanity.
Yeah. Amen.
It really is. So are you teaching in a way that's honoring the identities of students, regardless of, what their backgrounds are? And so for me, that means the student voice is heard. Their stories are present. They feel connected. They feel like they are relevant in that setting. There is a culture that acknowledges them, that makes them feel safe in that classroom. So they're not in the back of the class with their head down, not wanting to raise their hand because they think so differently. You are giving them permission to to speak and to share, even if their ideas may be a little bit different than everyone else. Like that's what relevance and responsiveness means to me. And I like to think of what I do as disrupting disengagement. My dissertation was about student disengagement. And one of the things that I've come to learn about myself and the educators and just humans that I support is that when you want to disrupt something, you got to start with yourself. You have to start with your own self and your own healing.
Good day and welcome back to the For Education podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening today. And I'm super excited for today's guest. She is a national board certified teacher. She has her own educational company and movement now. And I want to thank Dr. Michelle Singh for being here today. Michelle, thanks for jumping in with us.
I love that movement. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I read about. So before we jump into kind of all the detail of what you do and your teaching experience, can you give us a little bit of your background? Where are you from? What was growing up like for you?
Sure. Okay. So I'm originally from Jamaica. My family migrated here to the US when I was 9 years old. And so in coming here, even though in Jamaica our official language is English, of course we speak Patois, which is a different form of English. I had to kind of learn the American way of doing things, and that included the way people spoke, and that included just the culture and the differences and the expectations and what was considered right and what was considered wrong and what would make me feel accepted and, even as I got later on in life, easy to digest by some. And so my background is like embedded in that experience because I spent so much time trying to not necessarily assimilate, but trying to fit into this culture while also not losing myself and figuring out my identity in this different way of life. And it was and is and continues to be hard to navigate because I really just did not know where I truly belonged. And so that's my background, but that drives the work that I do in education because in my experience, my educational experience, I've had teachers who had those micro magical moments that sparked something in me. And then I've also had teachers who had those micro moments that totally derailed me. And so I became a teacher because I wanted to kind of honor those people who saw things in me that I didn't even recognize at the time.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's a little bit about where I am. I've been, what I do. I have been in education over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I taught in one of the nation's top school districts for 15 of those years.
Yeah.
I call myself a forever ELA teacher. So I taught secondary language arts in the high school, and I loved every moment of teaching language arts. I also worked at the district level and led professional development, training related to educational technology. And my role has totally evolved over the course of my journey as an education leader. As you mentioned earlier, and feel free to jump in because I'm trying to answer the
keep
questions.
going. This is great.
Oh gosh. So what what I do now in my role as an educational consultant, because I do have that, my company, LCTE Learning Solutions, but I'm also a professor. So I'm still right there in the
You're in
classroom.
it.
I'm still in it because
Yeah.
I'm a professor of teaching and learning. So I'm teaching the
Awesome.
teachers who are teaching the students, right?
Yeah.
And I like to think of what I do as disrupting disengagement. My dissertation
Love it.
was about student disengagement. And one of the things that I've come to learn about myself and the educators and just humans that I support is that when you want to disrupt something, you got to start with yourself.
Wow.
You have to start with your own self and your own healing. And so in my company, we partner with schools and districts and nonprofits and organizations. We do workshops and we do coaching and we do curriculum design, which is one of the main things that we focus on. But everything that we do centers around three anchors, I like to call it: empathy, equity, and excellence. Be-
Awesome.
because I feel like the work that I do lives in those anchors, and
Yeah.
it's also at the intersection of the act of teaching, but also healing and restoration, I think.
Wow. That's,
Hmm.
I read a book recently where it was about parenting, but it talked about, rather than focusing so much on education, about formation. And you kind of alluded to that. That really is such a, because we focus so much sometimes in school on skills and on mastery and on, all right, you've got to learn where X goes or where the comma goes or whatever, but forming the person. But I want to go back to something you said earlier, which stuck out. And I think it's a theme in a lot of the conversations I've been having is that you had a challenging experience as a student in school.
Hmm.
And that has kind of lit your fire to be sort of the teacher that you needed or the person that you needed when you were a kid. Is that was that a big part of you going into education? Was like, hey, school was hard for me, or at least some of school was hard for me, and so I want to be that person that can support the kids that are also going through that difficult experience in school.
Yeah, in some cases, yeah. I feel like education gave me a voice. And I say that because in my family and in my culture, we come to this new country, education is at the forefront. You gotta, you have to be successful because that's like your only way out.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
education has always been at the forefront. Like there was just no other way, right?
right.
And so for me, it gave me a voice, and I always had to do well. But
Yeah,
I had to do well despite all of the things,
yeah,
despite not being recognized,
yeah,
despite my name being mispronounced,
yeah,
despite not having my own culture and heritage recognized and honored, despite me thinking so differently because I am different, I look different, I'm from somewhere different, and not being given permission to say the things out loud that I'm thinking in my head because I think it
yeah,
doesn't fit. And like I remembered that as a language arts teacher because I always wanted students to feel like their thoughts, as long as it can be justified, as long as it can be supported, is
yeah,
valued. Because there were
yeah,
so many times in the classroom when I was a learner where the teacher would ask a question and or have us write something, and what I wrote and what I was thinking was so different than everyone else, and I'm like, did we read the same thing? you
yeah,
know and it's because of I recognize now as a teacher, as an educator, that it's because we have our prior experiences are so different. So
yeah,
mine was definitely different from those in my classroom who were just from here, and I
right,
just always thought I was wrong. I was
yeah,
never given that permission to share and to be okay with my views being different.
yeah. How many times, I mean, was it a common occurrence for you to think, oh, this is what I actually want to say or write or whatever, but I'm in school and I can't say that or I can't write that. Like I got to go with the flow.
Yeah, there was a lot of times where you just kind of go with the flow to kind of, to
Yeah,
avoid standing out. So
yeah,
you stay silent. You just don't share. You
yeah,
just do the work that you're told to do. There were
yeah.
lots of times where I experienced that. And I
Was
saw.
there,
Go ahead. I'm
well,
sorry.
was there a point where like you had a teacher who brought it out of you or somebody that spoke into you and kind of like
Yeah, I've had.
encouraged you to say, all right, no, who you are is important. You have to speak out. Was there like a moment or was that like a slow process of getting there?
I think it was a culmination of different events and different teachers. Like I talk about these little micro moments. And
Yeah.
so those are, I can name you teachers. Like I can name you my fourth grade Spanish teacher, Miss Fernandez, because when I just came from Jamaica, one of the things we did in school in Jamaica was whenever you spoke to an adult, you stood up.
Right.
You stood up to speak in class, no matter what you were doing. And so when I came here, I did that, and the kids would laugh at me all the time because every time I spoke to the teacher, I would stand up out of my seat. And
Yeah.
Miss Fernandez was the first teacher to say, Michelle, you don't have to do that. I know you're showing respect, and that's such a great thing for your culture and where you're from, because that's just what I do too. But
Right.
you don't have to do that here, because
Yeah.
she saw that I was being made fun of. I
Yeah.
can talk to you about my sixth grade teacher, Dr. Connor Miller, who I'm still connected to today. She was
Wow.
one of the first teachers who looked like me,
Yeah.
right? And I could talk to you about my middle school choir teacher who I just had brunch with last week
Wow.
because she supported me as a student and continues to support me even as an adult. I
Yeah.
could talk to you about Mrs. Marr, who was so firm, but she was so fair. And Mrs. Marr was my high school choir teacher. She ended up being my daughter's choir teacher in middle school. And
Wow.
the only reason I sent my daughter to that school was because I knew she was going to be taken care of by Mrs. Marr. So I can name teachers who,
Yeah.
have, like I said, those micro moments of things that stood out, whether they honored who I was as a human being, honored my work. Miss Siemens told me when I was a senior that I was always a good writer, and that
Yeah.
inspired me so much moving forward. I am a writer.
Yeah.
I have published, I have I've written a dissertation. I've
Yeah.
written lots of articles. And so those little moments, magical micro moments, yes, have really impacted me.
That's beautiful. So going back, you started school as a child in Jamaica, and then you were in elementary school when you moved to the US.
Yes.
Wow. So what was that transition like? I mean, did you have any say like, hey, this is happening, you're switching schools? Was it the middle of the school year? How did that go for you?
So when we came here, we came in May.
Yeah.
So it was the end of, whatever that prior school year was. This was
Yeah.
1991. I came here May 11th, 1991.
Yeah.
And so we started school that August. And so I was 9 and I was in fourth grade. There was a big difference because in Jamaica, I was actually in a different grade level. I was in a higher grade
Right.
level. And
Yep.
because of, like the September birthdays and things like that here, they
Yeah.
did put me into the fourth grade when I came here for elementary school. So it wasn't really like it was an interruption for sure because
Yeah.
of course I was no longer in my home country, but I was
Right.
still with my family and I was just going to school because that's what we did. We just
Yeah.
went to school. So I was just following the order,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to school. So it really didn't matter. Like I at that point, I don't think it mattered where I went. I was just going to the school that was in our neighborhood
Yeah.
because that's what they told us to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you move straight to Florida or was there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, right here in Miami. So I, our family moved to Miami. So what happened was my grandfather, my grandmother, they came up here first from Jamaica, and they worked and they saved up. They purchased a home and they started sending for their children and grandchildren. So we kind
Yeah.
of came up at different times, depending
Right.
on when like the immigration paperwork was finalized.
Yeah.
So myself, my mom, my brother, we came up together, and my aunt, we came up together, and I already had some aunts and uncles living here that had come up before. so we came up, and it was kind of like the last of the crew to
Yeah.
come up, because my grandparents had they have 6 children, and
Okay.
so yeah, like we were kind of like the last of the bunch to come up, and so it kind of felt like the whole family was here, and so
Yeah.
it was like a big deal, and for my grandfather, he was just so he was just proud that of just his kids and grandkids, and he was proud of his house, let me tell you, because he had he had a house with a pool, and it was like his pride and joy, because
Yes.
he wanted us to be so happy and go swimming in that pool. He made sure that pool was always clean and made sure that we had access to it. And so yeah, so that was just, I mean, the whole family just came up, and we left the home in Jamaica behind, and just came up here and just started a new life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I've never been to Jamaica, but the countries that I have been to in the Caribbean and Central America, it's a huge privilege. Even public schools, you have uniforms, you got to pay for school, pay for your books. And then the transition to public school in the US is all of a sudden, I think Miami-Dade does, but most places they don't have school uniforms, and everything's free, but it's a whole different, it goes from like, all right, school is a huge privilege to hear, like a lot of kids take it for granted. They have no idea what access they have. And so stepping into like from going from a system like that in Jamaica to stepping into school in the US, was there a massive like shock to the system, or was it you're so young you didn't really realize the differences that there were in school?
No, that's a good question. I feel like I recognize some things. So you
Yeah.
mentioned the uniforms, and I'm like, yes, I remember. So back then, uniforms were not mandatory, but there were some situations where they did have uniforms, and because in Jamaica we wore uniforms. I mean, you
Right.
don't go to school without wearing uniforms, right?
Yeah.
I remember ironing uniforms and getting those pleats right to go to school, right?
Yeah.
And so when I came here and you just wore regular clothes, it felt weird. I'm like, I wear my everyday clothes to school. And then there was like a group, I don't know, a group of teachers, and I know that I just don't know how they ended up giving my family assistance, basically. But I just remember them giving me a bag, and the bag had uniforms. I was like, oh, that's nice. And so I would wear those uniforms to school, and kids would make fun of me. But I
Wow.
was like very comfortable because that was what I was used to.
Right.
So I'm like
Right.
the only little girl with a uniform on, and here I am feeling very like confident and comfortable, because that's just what we did in Jamaica,
Yeah.
and these little kids out here making fun of me because because I'm wearing a uniform.
Wow.
So I do remember that. I remember that very vividly, and I also remember, so you mentioned in certain countries and certain islands the educational system is not as it's the access is not there,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I do recall that, like, I remember my brother and I walking to school one summer, to summer school. It was the same school we went to in the school year. And I
Yeah.
remember us being turned around because my mom couldn't pay the school fee, and we
Wow.
were sent right back home on the
Yeah.
bus. So I remember what it's like to kind of have that access snatched
Right.
in that moment. So when we came here and everything is like open and accessible, of course I'm going to take advantage. I'm going to wear
Yeah.
the uniform. I'm going to like take the books,
I'm not gonna
and
mess this up.
I'm not going to, yeah, I'm not going to miss a beat, because I know what it's like to not have it,
Yeah.
you know?
Wow. So moving from Jamaica to the U.S. is a huge move. Miami-Dade has a really big Caribbean population. Was there any
Hmm.
sense of like comfort in that, or was it still just so foreign coming to such a huge city and such a big school and big environment? Like, how much of it was there like, oh, there is some comfort in this, some familiarity, or this is just a completely different world?
I think in the beginning in elementary school, I think I was just trying to figure out the world. I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out these United States
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
expectations and things like that. And I think once I got to, I would just say high school, because middle school, with all of the things happening emotionally and
For everybody.
you know what happens
Yeah.
to middle school kids trying to figure out who you are, who you fit
Yeah.
in with, all of those things. I would say it wasn't until high school where I really I found my people. I
Yeah.
truly found my people. And a lot of them were Caribbean,
Yeah.
are Caribbean like me. In fact, yeah, to be quite honest, my closest friends from high school, we met in ninth grade in first period class. Mr.
Wow.
Barnett's first period class. We are still friends to this day. We talk
Awesome.
regularly, and the whole crew of us, we're all from some different island, whether it's Jamaica, or Panama, or the Bahamas, or Saint Croix. Like we're all our families are all from somewhere,
Yeah.
and so I do love that mix that we have here, those different cultures that we have here, particularly in Miami-Dade,
Yeah.
because I've trained and worked with teachers in lots of school districts all over, and we just have something beautiful and unique here
Yeah.
that you don't see elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, again, for me, I didn't quite get that. I didn't quite recognize that until I got to high school and was really like figuring out my place and myself.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So was there a moment when you decided I want to become a teacher? Like, did you go into college knowing I'm studying to be a teacher, or was there a whole path to get there for you?
That's let me tell you that story. So, yes and no. I did go into college knowing I wanted to be in education. So when I was in high school, my school principal, Mrs. King was she was just a fierce. She was so elegant. And she was a black woman, and I looked up to Mrs. King. Right? I mean, she was the epitome of like this person who is the leader that I want to become. And
Yeah.
so there was a program that I was in high school called the Advanced Academic Internship Program. And so in this program, you get to do an internship with the career that you want. So let's say you wanted to be a doctor, you could go for one of your 6 period class, you could go to the hospital and shadow a doctor, or whatever that is. So
Yeah.
I wanted to be Mrs. King. So I
Go to the principal's
shadowed.
office.
No, exactly. That's what I did. So sixth period, I would shadow Mrs. King doing her stuff. I would sit in her office. I would listen and observe her. And so when I went to college, I wanted to be a principal. And
Awesome.
then the people told me, well, you got to teach first. And I was like, what? I have to teach first.
Idea.
So I had to choose a major.
Yeah.
And I remembered Mrs. Siemens telling me that, Michelle, you are a good writer. And I had a middle school English teacher, Mr. Kopek, who kept my writing portfolio like this thick of all of the things that I had done in his class. And he kept it to show the other students all the other years what they would be doing. And I didn't know this until like way later on that he did this. I was like a volunteering at the middle school that I went to. And
Yeah.
I walked by his classroom and it was sitting on his desk. I was like, wow.
I love that you remember all the names too. That says a
Yes,
lot about what they meant to
yes,
you.
I do. I remember them because they did, they touched me. They really
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So I decided to major in English education, and then I came out and I became an English, a secondary English teacher. So I taught high school English. So I was 22 years old teaching 11th graders and sponsoring student government with 12th graders. So that was, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. That's the way to start. That's awesome. I, I remember when I graduated college at 22 and I was teaching high school and I had a student who was 20. And so
Ooh.
it's like I didn't tell him how old I was, but I was like, we're within 2 years of each
Wow. Yeah, no, they didn't know how old I was. I mean, I'm sure they figured it out since I was a college
Yep.
grad, but yeah,
Yep.
I didn't realize how close the age difference was until like, recently when I'm looking and seeing the kids well, the adults because they're now
Yep.
adults that I'm now connected to, they have their whole lives. They're married with children and their whole careers and I'm like, man, am I that old?
That's great. So, and did you go straight into teaching in Miami-Dade?
Yeah, so that's another story too.
I love it.
So, yeah, so when I graduated, I came back to Miami, I actually did my internship here. And when I was looking for a full-time job, my vice principal from the high school I went to, Mrs. Pike, she actually hired me to come to the school where she was at. So there was a new school that she was now the vice principal of, and she actually gave me a chance to come there, and I ended up there full time, and I worked there almost the 10 years, almost for
Wow.
10 years at that one school. So it was because of Mrs. Pike that I ended up in the education trajectory,
Yeah.
which I followed because I was hired and I was teaching gifted students. So I had to
Yeah.
get gifted certified. And then through that, I ended up getting a degree in educational technology because these kids were like blowing me away with all the things that they were doing with tech. And I'm like, I need to catch up. So I got a degree in educational technology. And then as
Awesome.
I was learning and getting certified to teach gifted students, I realized like this is just cracking the this is scratching the surface. I need more. And I
Yeah.
ended up getting a whole nother degree in gifted ed. And
Wow.
so if I hadn't ended up at that school because of Mrs. Pike, I would not have gone the route that I did.
Yeah.
I think so for sure.
That's cool how one person can impact and set you on the trajectory just with them giving you an opportunity, or what I like to say, like empowering you. She
Yeah,
put you in that position to grow. That's
absolutely.
really
And
cool.
again, that's like, that's them. So many teachers just see certain things in you that you don't see yourself just yet. And
Yeah.
that's an example of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little more about your teaching career. For those that don't know, that aren't from Florida, probably don't realize that Miami-Dade is. I love the way you phrased it. You're like one of the top districts. It's the third
Hmm.
largest district in the entire country. I mean, it goes New York, LA, and then Miami-Dade. It's
Hmm.
absolutely massive. And from being outside of Miami-Dade, a lot of people look at it as a difficult place to teach. And so I'd love to hear how was your experience. Most teachers have a really have horror stories from their first year. So how was knowing, you had kind of already knowing for years you wanted to go into teaching. How was the first year? How did it go for you being in the classroom?
So I don't have any horror stories about my classroom and teaching experience
It's
because
great.
I totally enjoyed my students and the
Yeah.
subject area that I taught. Truly, I really did. So also remember that I came through the Miami-Dade County Public School system from the fourth grade to the 12th grade. So, I already had familiarity from a student lens. And then I had familiarity too, later on from a parent lens because my
Yeah.
daughter matriculated through Miami-Dade County Public Schools from kinder to graduation, 12th grade. And so I would say that, my first year of teaching, I think I just wanted to prove because I was so young.
Yeah.
I wanted to just prove that I belonged there in that department teaching the high level kids and, in a school where all of the other teachers some of them were my own teachers. I actually taught with teachers who taught me.
That's really cool.
I did, yes. And so I just wanted to prove that I belonged there and my age wasn't a burden,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But outside of just that kind of internal battle that I had, I loved my subject area. I loved the experiences I was able to bring into the classroom. I remember definitely wanting to expose students to the literature and the stories that I wasn't exposed to, throughout my educational career until I
Yeah.
got to college and took like an African American literature class. So I remember my students read Their Eyes Were Watching God. Now some of these stories probably are on the banned list now, but
Yeah.
back then,
Sure. Yeah.
we read Their Eyes Were Watching God, and that's one of my favorites by Zora Neale Hurston. And then I was also able to take my students on a field trip to Eatonville, Florida. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but
Oh
Eatonville,
yeah, it's right up the
Florida.
road here. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the first African American township
Yeah.
ever established, and that is where Zora Neale Hurston and her family live. And every year they have like a Zora Neale Hurston festival, and I was able to take my students to experience that and to
Awesome.
walk outside of the book. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's one of the most memorable teaching experiences I have for sure. So
That's
I
awesome.
totally enjoyed and loved teaching my students. Truly, I did.
That's incredible. So I you hear a lot of teachers that talk about how difficult the job is and how challenging. It's so refreshing to hear someone say for 15 years you loved every moment of it. That's
Yeah, I did, but I will. Here's the here's the disclaimer. Now, having lived outside of it, looking at it from the other lens, I do see why we burn out.
yeah,
I do see why we are overextended. I do see why we are overwhelmed and we are overstimulated, and
yeah,
and you don't recognize that while you're in it. You
right.
really don't. It took
You're
me
too
getting
close to it. Yeah,
exactly. You're too close, so it took me getting out to see it.
yeah,
And one of the things that I do in my work now is I really focus on helping teachers unlearn some of these habits and routines and kind of institutionalized thinking that they have around their well-being and their need for rest,
yeah,
because we don't see it when we're in it. And I feel like it's my job and my calling to help teachers not get to the point of burnout where they're at whatever year. For me it was 15 years, and I actually left the school district because of things just getting to a point where I couldn't take it no more. Like
right.
I really couldn't. But by that time I was out of the classroom and I was at the district level.
Yep.
And so I really feel it's like it's my duty, because it happened to me and because I learned how to deal with it and I learned the strategies. I've created programs. I have the Restful Teacher program. I have the resources. I actually just did a journal. So I do workshops and professional development for teachers around their mental wellness and just
Yeah.
the different areas of rest that Dr. Sandra Dalton talks about, 7 areas of rest. And so I help the teachers center themselves, because if they are not well and they are not fully rested, they cannot teach from a place of wholeness. And I really feel
Right.
like you have to be able to teach from a place of wholeness, because if you can't feel, how are you going to be empathetic? How are you going to be culturally competent? How
Yeah.
are you going to make equity a practice if you're not feeling and you're just like on autopilot every single day?
Yeah.
You know?
That's really important. And when you're in it and you care, because teachers care so much, and they don't give themselves that freedom. One, they don't have the ability to see it in the moment, but two, you don't give yourself the freedom to rest or to take a step back. And a lot of times you don't have capacity. You just can't. It's not
You
possible.
that's it, the capacity. You don't have the capacity, and you don't know that you don't have it until you get to the very end and you're like, I need out.
Yeah.
And then we end up losing really good people.
Yeah.
Really, really good people. Luckily for me, I'm still in it, even though I'm out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still directly involved in the educational ecosystems. I'm just doing it in a way that is more aligned to where I am in my life right now.
That's awesome. So tell me about that. How was your Like, how did you know when it was time to step away? Because I think a lot of great teachers feel this guilt of leaving the classroom because there's such a high need, right? It's like if I'm not there, who like there's such a shortage, but the classroom is not the only place where you can make an impact. And so, what was that? How difficult was that transition out? How did you know it was time? And then I'd love to hear more about what you do now.
Yeah, so I think one of the hardest decisions that I made career wise was ultimately quitting my 15-year career
Yeah,
in the public school system. And it wasn't an easy decision, but I needed to protect my well-being, my health.
yeah,
My health was it was going, it was spiraling down.
yeah,
My weight, my mental capacity. I mean, it really the level of the I don't even know the word to describe it, but I was at a place where I just could not I just could not function in that environment
right,
and survive. I really could not. And so I had
yeah,
to, I actually wrote an article about this in the ASCD EL magazine, and the title of it is Why I Left. And I actually documented all of the things that led to me leaving,
yeah,
as a black woman in a school system, in an institution, and all of the things that just built upon, just built up to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and I
yeah,
found a way out. And my
yeah,
way out was still being a teacher, but a different kind of teacher. I actually got an opportunity to be a what's called a Microsoft learning consultant, and so I was
cool,
delivering training and development for Microsoft with school districts. It took me right back to Miami-Dade County during COVID. I helped to lead the COVID initiatives in Miami-Dade around Microsoft
cool,
365, and I did that for about a year, and then I started my business. And while I was starting my business, I still had a 9 to 5 job. I became a client success manager
yeah,
for an online company while I was still figuring out what I was doing in my business.
yeah,
And I'm all the way in my business, and I'm creating curriculum, developing professional development and programs for teachers globally. And so, so what my work now is, it's writing, it's researching, it's teaching, it's leading, it's creating, it's
yeah,
lifting as I climb. And everything that I do, whether it's curriculum design or professional development or coaching or just teaching, it's I like to say that it speaks to the whole learner, because I
yeah,
design for the whole learner, and I design for the whole educator, because I want to make sure that everything that I offer in this company is relational, it's reflective, and it's rooted in rest, and it's rooted
yeah,
in real world impact. And so, some of the things that some of the books and the journals that I have out, they are aligned with, this idea of rest. And
yeah.
ultimately it's around our proprietary framework, which is the equal methodology.
Okay.
And so everything we do is kind of like in line with that. Like, that's just the foundation of our work. The equal methodology and the equal stands. It's an acronym. Each part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share more about what is the Restful Teacher and what is the equal
Yeah.
methodology?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, all right. So the equal methodology is our proprietary framework. Uh, As a teacher, you know that anything you create or anything you write or anything you do, it's supposed to be based on proof, on research, research practices and things like that, right? And you have a framework. Like, we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we look at the map of pedagogical knowledge, we look at Bloom's taxonomy. Those are all frameworks. And so I wanted to come up with something that in our company, everything we do is, that's the foundation of it. It ties into it. And so I I spent, I can't tell you how many days in my garage. My whole garage is plastered with Post-its, those giant Post-its that we use when we're doing like gallery walks and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just brain dumping everything that I had learned, for the past 15 years on these Post-its. It took me days, and then I organized it, created a strategy, and that was how the equal methodology was born. And so the E is about evaluating the culture, like the learning culture. What is it like for the teachers as well as the students when they are in that environment? What does learning look and feel like for them, right? And then there's the Q, which is to qualify the practices with evidence. Again, we talk about how we are approaching our instruction, and we need to make sure that our instruction is grounded in evidence, culturally relevant pedagogy, or culturally, responsive teaching, UDL, things like that, right? The U is for uplifting student skills and also uplifting their voice, right? So what future ready skills are we exposing our students to, and whose stories are being told and heard in the classroom,
Yeah.
right? The next one, the A is, I like this. I don't know. It's like a fun one. I always do a little dance when I say it. It's activating a student success team of
Love it.
stakeholders, because I truly believe that there's, I'm sure you guys have heard the proverb, it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it takes a community to raise a classroom.
Yeah.
And I actually talk about that in my TED Talk. So if you could search my name and TED
We'll
Talk.
link to it. Yeah, in the description. Awesome.
Yes. And then the L is leveraging equitable assessments and feedback, because assessments is not just all about the test.
Multiple
And you know what
choice, standardized tests.
Exactly. You know what test I'm talking about. And so I believe that the equal methodology, each part of those four, like it's really the foundation of everything. It allows what we do to be, I would say, it amplifies story. It amplifies the learner's strengths. It allows for us to be inclusive. It allows for us to honor belonging. It allows for us to be strategic with how we approach our teaching, like, with the standards and with the instructional strategies that we use. It allows us to be creative. It allows us to be identity focused. And it allows us to be innovative with technology and whatever else. And so I like to think of it like, so we know that with traditional curriculum, there's this idea that you got to comply. Just teach to the test. Like we've heard that so many times. And so I like to think that this approach helps us to move from the curriculum being compliance to more the curriculum as a catalyst. The curriculum becomes a catalyst so that when your learners leave your classroom and they're my age, they can remember you by name and what you said to them and what you taught them.
Yeah.
And so, so I lay all of this out in a couple of things that I have. I have this resource called The Blueprint. It's available on Amazon. Basically, it maps out what the equal methodology is, and it actually has like ready to use tools for school leaders and for educators who want to they want to have strategies to use for each of the four areas of the equal methodology. And I also have a journal, because I am a reflective practitioner. One of the most important lessons that I learned in my career as an educator was during my national board process the first time. And it was how to reflect as a teacher. And I carried, I did national boards maybe like almost 15 years ago. And I carry that with me, not just in my practice as an educator or a leader, but also as a human. Like I reflect on a daily, like that's just how I grow.
Yeah.
as a human being. And so I like to create opportunities for teachers to that makes reflection easy for them. And so that's what you see in this journal here. The I got it here too. Let me grab it. It's the Equity and Excellence in Teaching Journal, but this is all the equal methodology is the foundation of this. And there are journal topics that not just help you as a teacher, but it helps you to improve your practice so that it is more equitable and empathetic, and you can create those learning experiences for your students that are rooted in the spirit of excellence. And and then so that's all
A lot of
really.
alliteration. I like it. Makes it easier to remember.
Yes, I love alliteration. That's a language arts teacher in me. So yeah, that's what the equal methodology is. And then you also asked about the restful teacher.
Yeah.
So like the restful teacher was just born from my own personal experience. Like remember I told you that it took me getting out to realize like how bad things were. And then
Yes.
I actually had to implement practices myself to better myself. And I'm like, yo, I'm doing all of this for me and it's working. I can't keep this to myself. I have
Yeah.
to share this with all the teachers that I know. And so I created that first year, I created like a 30-day of restful practices that you can do just just to get yourself going right before
Yeah.
school. And so like teachers were involved, they were commenting, they were sending me emails from all around the world, truly. And then I'm like, people are actually listening and they're really interested. And so, this led to webinars and partnerships and workshops
Wow.
and lots of resources. And I do a Restful Teacher Challenge this is going to be the third year. And I invite speakers to come in and speak. We do this virtually just like you and I are doing, but
Yeah.
everybody from mental health professionals to HR professionals to educators to leaders who are coming to talk about whatever our theme is for that Restful Teacher Challenge. And they
Yeah.
give like real life practical experiences to help you unlearn what you've been taught about rest. And they give you, practical things that you can use like right away. I
Yeah.
actually just did a workshop this weekend about the power of protecting your mental wellness. And
Yeah.
the Restful Teacher was, the core of that. And what I just actually released is a journal called Breathe Between the Lines. And it's all about the restful practices. And then it's also about how you can apply it personally, but also professionally, because there are questions in there that help you to see how you can model those SEL practices
Right.
for your students too. Because I wished in elementary school a teacher would have showed me how doing the box breathing technique or the 478 breathing technique would help me self-regulate.
Yeah. It's
Right?
funny you say that because my son's 5 and he's in kindergarten and he learned those in preschool, like the breathing techniques, and it's cool
Yes.
to see him use that. But those little things that you can apply,
Oh
that's
my
awesome.
gosh, yeah. So I'm so glad to hear that they're actually doing that now, because I wished that those were things that we would have been taught.
Yeah.
There, it's not consistently around, I think, and
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that teachers are teaching and leading from a place of wholeness and healing.
That's a great mission. That's a clear statement. So I gotta ask because I feel like you probably get some pushback on this, but I'm guessing teachers that are exhausted and they're overwhelmed and they're beyond their capacity, and then
Mhm.
something like this comes up. How do you fight the another thing? Like, how am I going to go to this? I actually need to be resting. Like, what's the what's the encouragement for teachers to say, hey, this is going to be worth your time, whatever it is, to invest in your own rest, because that's usually the last thing teachers
Yeah.
are going to spend time on.
It's absolutely the truth that you don't put yourself first. And as caretakers, because that's what we are, caretakers,
Yeah.
right? We often don't put ourselves first. So I think how I approach that is by confronting with the truth. You confront with the truth. The truth is, you are feeling this way, and here's exactly how you're feeling, and here's the result if this is not addressed right now.
Yeah.
Like, you have to lead in with the truth. Like, I recognize that this is how things are for you, but it can get better. We just need to unlearn some things. And we need to be okay and not feel guilt and shame by
Yeah.
saying yes to ourselves.
Well, that's good because a lot of teachers come in and they're like, "Oh, but if I don't keep going, then I'm going to miss whatever they're but I'm not going to be able to serve this student or this class or this school
Hmm.
anymore." It's like, if you keep going the way you are, you're not going to be able to because you're going
Right.
to burn out. And so
Yeah.
you're kind of pointing them from one consequence that they think is the only one where, oh, I'm not going to be there, to, hey, this is actually the other end of it. You're going to be so exhausted, so tired, so burnt out, so unhealthy that you're not going to be able to serve anybody. That's
Yeah. And I
so,
also think giving teachers an opportunity. I used to see this missing a lot in many of the professional learning experiences that I had participated in early on, but giving teachers the opportunity to have a voice and a say. Like, that's why reflection is so important to me, reflective practices, because those are embedded in the learning experiences I create. Like, I want teachers to be able to reflect and to be able to share and speak
yeah,
and feel heard and feel seen when
yeah,
they are together, because that's how community is built. And I
yeah,
feel like when they can do that in a space, whether it's a virtual space or an in-person space, because I do it in both, I
yeah,
feel like that's when they have those hesitations, they can, one, see that they're not alone, and
yeah,
two, hear from others who are in the same boat and maybe addressing it on a different level, and
yeah.
so that they can see that there is possibility. So I think community is important and reflection is important, because you can't do this work alone.
Yeah, that's really good. So, do you work with individual teachers,
Hmm.
schools, school districts? If someone wants to work with you or learn from you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I know so different things. So I do work with school districts, and I do work with non organizations and nonprofits. So I also do coaching for individual teachers as well.
Cool.
So yeah, I have teachers who I work with individually. I actually also have initiatives and programs that we do through the company that are completely free.
Yeah.
So we did recently a series called Cultivate, that was just about being present in the space and acknowledging whatever is happening right now and how it's affecting you and how you can move to the next side of that, like just cultivating that wholeness. So we did that, like a 3-month series. That's coming back. We do the Restful Teacher Challenge and give resources. That's coming back. And then, I am here in Miami, Florida. I actually live in Homestead, but you know how it is. People
Yeah.
don't know Homestead, so I just say
Miami Dade.
right. But I'm gonna be having like in-person gatherings for like folks who are connected to to my community as well. So
Awesome.
I definitely have different ways for whether you're an organization, whether you're a school, a district, an educational leader, a principal, whatever that looks like, a teacher who just, like, I teach emerging teachers, early career teachers. A lot of them are career changers. And I teach them at the college and university level, but I also get to coach them too after they've left my classroom. So I
Yeah.
do work with individual folks as well. Hmm.
Awesome. So I want to go back to one point, and this might be my last question because it's a fairly big one. But like, we talked a little bit, you talked about empathy, and then you talked about culturally responsive teaching. And this came up in a previous podcast. It was pretty much the topic of it. And I want to ask, like, how you cultivate that and how a teacher would do that in the classroom. But I kind of want to do the opposite question first, because I think this is a struggle in a lot of classrooms across the U.S. What is a classroom that's not culturally responsive look like? Like, what would be a fail in that area? Because I think a lot of teachers one, don't know it's a thing, don't know it exists, don't
Yeah.
know it's something that they ought to be doing, and they don't know that their class isn't culturally responsive. So what do you think it would
Yeah.
look like in a classroom that's not culturally responsive?
So I can only speak from my experience as a teacher and as a learner, right? When it comes to this. And also, I'll just speak from that lens because
Yeah,
I've observed lots of classrooms, but I'll speak from that lens. I have been in classrooms in the same school where between periods it felt like I was in a whole nother district and I was in the same classroom. Because in one class, that's a AP or pre-AP class, the students are taught in a different way than the regular class.
yeah,
In that regular class, those students are conditioned to sit and get. They
yeah,
are given a worksheet, they open their textbook, they finish the worksheet, they sit quietly, they do it, and they leave. There is
yeah,
absolutely no interaction, there's no sharing, there's no thinking,
right,
higher level thinking, because they have been conditioned, however long in their educational career, to just sit there and do that worksheet or do
yeah,
that packet. That is not good teaching. That
yeah,
is no teaching. That is not culturally anything. That's
right.
not responsive anything.
It's low standard.
Yes. And so I would say that a classroom, and again, I'm speaking from my experience because I have
Right.
literally been there. Close the door. This is one class. Imagine trying to do a Socratic seminar with a class that has never opened their mouth to speak to the teacher,
Right. Yeah.
right? Versus an AP class or pre AP class where that's all they do
Yeah.
in the same school environment. Okay,
Yeah.
so I would say that would be an example for me based on my life experience of what not culturally relevant is. And I want to also kind of address it, culturally responsive, culturally relevant. It's not even all about the culture, it's just about honoring humanity.
Yeah. Amen.
It really is. So are you teaching in a way that's honoring the identities of students regardless of, what their backgrounds are?
Yeah.
And so for me, that means the student voice is heard. Their stories are present. They feel connected. They feel like they are relevant in that setting. There is a
Yeah.
culture that acknowledges them, that makes them feel safe in that classroom. So they're not in the back of the class with their head down, not wanting to raise their hand because they think so differently. You are giving them permission to speak and to share, even if their ideas may be a little bit different than everyone else.
Yeah.
Like that's what relevance and responsiveness means to me.
That's so good. And I think that you nailed it with the personalization of it. Like every student is an individual. We group students all the time, whether it's by race or color or background or country of origin or language or religion or orientation, whatever. We group them together, but they're not all even in the same, like
Mhm.
everybody is different. And that's the power of the relationship of when you're a teacher and you're standing at the door and you're greeting your kid and you're asking them about their life and their family and their sport and their club and their interests and you're following up on that. Now
Yeah.
you can tailor your conversations to that. And I think what I've found to be so sad is there's so many students sitting in our classrooms that have so much talent,
Oh
so
yeah.
much to offer, and but our curriculum and our school system doesn't pull it out of them. If anything, it pushes them and says, "Oh, you're not good at the standardized test. You're not good at the five
Yep.
paragraph essay. You're not any
Yep.
good. So sit in the corner and shut up and don't cause trouble." And a good teacher will pull that
Yeah.
out of them. And I love that you had some righteous anger in your response
Oh
there
my gosh,
because
did you hear it? No, because
it's
because I lived it. Like as a student, I
yeah,
lived it. As a teacher, I
yeah,
dealt with that frustration. I'm like, how can this be the norm in this
yeah,
school? How can that be okay? And this has gone on for however many decades, and
yeah,
like very frustrating. And then I lived it as a parent.
Yeah.
observing, going to school, because I used to go to schools in my role at the district, and I just happened to my daughter's school was one of them, and my daughter is brilliant. She is
Yeah.
she's in college. She's a senior at Howard University now. She's preparing for the LSAT, and
Awesome.
in high school, though, there were some classes where she was like just a little quiet girl in the back of the class, not saying nothing. But outside of school, she was like the president of organizations, leading groups and community service projects, and following Robert's Rules of Order. Like,
Yeah.
you're telling me that this child is that same child sitting back there like that? You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I've seen it, I've lived it, I have totally lived it,
Yeah.
where her brilliance was just not honored, but I've also seen it where it was in certain
Yeah.
classrooms. Like, I talk about her experience with her English teacher, Miss Dillon, all the time, because that teacher helped her to she did a project that I will never forget. I will always remember Miss Dillon for it. It was a cultural project. She had to interview a grandparent. So she actually interviewed her great grandfather, my grandfather, and we recorded it. And he told stories about how we came here from Jamaica and how he started from, I mean, it was beautiful. And my grandfather passed away actually not too long after that. But we have those videos in our family because of that project that
That's
teacher did,
gold.
isn't it?
Wow.
But
That's
not
so
every teacher is that teacher. Shout out to Miss Dillon.
that's missed on, and how many of those opportunities are missed every day in our classrooms
Exactly.
because teachers aren't doing it.
Yeah.
And my last, what I want to leave on is, since you work with teachers a lot and you know the current landscape of the classroom, what message do you have for teachers today? Like, what's one thing you would hope that they could take in, kind of in where we're
Yeah.
at in fall 2025 in this climate?
I know, right? So with this climate where there's lots of unknowns, it is really, really important that you protect your presence,
Yeah.
your whole self. You have to protect that, because if you're not full, if you are not whole, you cannot show up in the way that these children need you to show up. And I would
Yep.
also say, protect your presence and teach with purpose. Like, everybody has a why. I mean, I'm sure I've stated my why somewhere down the line earlier in the conversation, but I always go back to those teachers that did something for me, which is why I'm in this, trying to do for others, right? So teach with purpose. Like, you have to understand, like, why are you here, and tap into that. Like, what does teaching with excellence look like for you? What does empathy in learning look like for you? Like, how are you able to how are your students able to access whatever it is you're teaching them, so
Yeah.
that they have full access to it, and they can be proud about the results? And it has to be, you have to figure out a way to make equity visible. And I know there's so much theory in that word, right? But you can make it visible. Like, you can have practical ways where students can grow, and
Yeah.
you're helping them grow because you are tapping into the things that make them human,
Yeah.
their strengths, their identity. You're helping them to feel like they belong in the space with you. So protect your presence first, because if you are not all right, they're not going to be all right. And then you
Good. Yeah.
teach with purpose. Yeah, I would say that. Protect your
I
presence,
love that.
teach with purpose.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And so, for those out there that want to connect with you, what's the best place to find you? Your website, social media?
Yeah,
How can folks
actually,
connect with you?
whoop, right down here,
There it is.
connectwithmichelle.com. If when you
Awesome.
go to connectwithmichelle.com, you'll just put your name, you'll get an email, you can book a call with me, and we could just connect and chat.
Perfect. Awesome. Michelle, thank you so much. This was a fun conversation. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for your story and what you do. And it's really awesome to hear your experience and the fruit of it. So thanks for doing what you do, and look forward to hopefully another one. So
Yeah, that would be
awesome.
so cool. Well, thank you for giving me a space to share so many stories. I didn't realize I was going to share so many of them in this conversation.
Well, I'm glad it's the perfect place for it. So wonderful. Well, best wishes and good luck to your daughter on the LSAT and finishing up college.
Thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in.